Welcome Director, Terragni Consulting, Dr. Anil Pillai. Thank you very much, sir. I can see you on screen. You're live and the session's all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Kesha. I know it's been a little bit of a delay, but I think we can get going. And I'm going to share my screen now. Just tell me if you can see the screen. I've just shared my screen. Can you see it?
Absolutely.
Very good. So I know we've come here after a long delay. Kesha said go hydrate yourself, and what turned up happening was I think you all not only hydrated yourself but had a good coffee, perhaps had a good snack, and now we are back again. So it's been an absolute pleasure to be speaking at Customer Fest all these years, and this year is no different. Of course, it's all virtual, so can't draw the energy from each of you, but I think it's still well worth our while to discuss as we go along. So why this topic? So it's very interesting. As the pandemic rolled out across the world, everybody decided that we will go digital because that was the only way. And one of our customers, a very large bank, came to us and said, we're spending an enormous amount of money trying to reach out to our customers and communicating different things, but they don't seem to be noticing this. And when I say enormous amounts of money, seriously enormous amounts of money. And they said, why does this happen? And that made me kind of look at this subject a little more closer. As many of you who know me, I spend a lot of my time, energy, and focus on consumer neuroscience and behavior science for customer experience and human engagement. So that's where I come from. And therefore, I always like to ask the question, why? And that then led me down the proverbial rabbit hole. And here I am. So, I'm going to divide this talk into, or this conversation that we're going to have into broadly three halves, three parts. First, I'm going to cover some amount of background, some amount of theory. Then I'm going to show you some examples of how it can be applied. And then hopefully there's a little quiz for you at the end of our 20-25 minutes that we have. So let's dive straight into it. So, while I was preparing for this talk, I read a great quote which said, life and business is a resource allocation problem. And it's true. Basically, there are four resources that are always going to be in short supply for humanity: time, energy, capital, that's money, and attention. And today we're going to talk about attention. Yeah. So moving on, I cleared my own technical glitches. Yes. So if you look at the span of human attention, it has fallen down from 12 seconds to 8 seconds. In the year 2000, our attention span was roughly around 12 seconds. And now it's somewhere around 8 seconds. That's really how our attention span has dramatically fallen. And congratulations, all human beings. Now you officially have a lower attention span than the goldfish, which is somewhere around 9.5 seconds. Now, this is very interesting. So you're seeing a drop in our attention spans, and consequent to that, you also have a heuristic, and this is a very well researched heuristic, which says typically we can hold around 4 to 9 items of things in our short-term memory. So on the one hand, attention spans are coming down. On the other hand, you just have this much that you can hold in your memory. And coupled to that, we check our phones at an average of 96 times a day, depending on what kind of demography you belong to. I personally know people who check their phones, I think, much more than 100 times a day. So all this, therefore, leads to something called attention economics. And attention, for anybody in the audience who's interested in consumers, in markets, in the way markets are shifting, attention economics is an interesting area. I promise you that you will not be disappointed when you study it a little more in detail. So as everything in economics, when something becomes scarce, its cost goes up, right? When something is in short supply, economics says the price of it goes up. And that's exactly what is happening with attention. Now, while we look at attention, I have gathered some very interesting data from all over the world for you. And I'm going to share some of that with you as we go along, just to set the context. So 84% of web visitors abandon their purchase because of friction. Roughly around 70 abandon online shopping carts. 86 abandon mobile shopping carts. 43% will only buy if you contextualize and personalize it for them. And of course, trust plays a very important part. So 55% will only buy if they feel the brand is trusted, more so in the post-pandemic age that we are moving into. And even in B2B, roughly around 89% of customers will search online. And you'll be interested to know that India and China actually lead this statistical number. So now look at the enormous cost that goes into this. The huge amount of cost that goes into actually creating a customer journey only to have it abandoned because of friction, because of some other lack of attention that the consumer or customer has actually exhibited. Now, what I did is I further went into this and say, how have we as humans performed over the last 6 months when the pandemic was really in its at peak in many geographies? How did we perform? And this is it. Over and above the figures that I showed you earlier, there's a consequent 55% increase in both abandonment as well as average number of errors per session. Of course, you can also make the argument that this could be because just the sheer amount of digital properties and digital assets have gone up. So obviously, the errors and abandonments would keep pace. But I think there's more to this story. And of course, there's a very favorite example of mine that I just dug out last night, and I had a few conversations with people. I don't know how many of you know the screen, but this is the famous $500 million screen of Citibank, right? And this error cost Citibank $500 million in revenue, or in money actually. So, and this is because of 3 very interesting behavioral biases, and we'll talk about behavioral biases a little earlier. So now you can get a measure of the consequent cost of attention. What is the cost that attention has when you actually look at the digital economy? Now, why does this happen? Why do we actually have such short attention spans? Why do we have increasing a rate of abandonments because we are distracted? And what can marketers learn from this? And what can customer experience professionals learn from this? Now, there are 4 reasons, and we will dive a little bit into these 4 reasons. I will not go into too much of detail because, like I said, today is just a little bit of an introduction on this entire topic for the audience here. Idea is to spark an interest that will hopefully make you look at this in a different light at the end of our conversation today. So there are 4 reasons: anxiety, the deluge of distraction, reward-seeking behavior, and the fear of missing out. Now we'll take a couple of these for further discussion. So if you look at anxiety, this is of course natural because we are just coming on the back of an intensely anxious experience. The pandemic, the lockdown, the consequent economic damage, all this and the uncertainty, because we don't know really what will happen tomorrow. We don't know what's going to happen next week. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and this has given rise to a significantly large amount of anxiety. And for the academically inclined, whenever we exhibit anxiety, what happens is our happy hormones get attenuated or dampened, and cortisol gets released. And cortisol, as you know, has significant effects both in terms of how much attention you can pay to something, as well as things like inflammation and so on and so forth. So there's this very large amount of anxiety in our ecosystem, which actually does not allow us to focus on things for too long a time because our mind just is completely occupied with the imminent threat. The other thing is the deluge of distraction. There is a significant amount of distraction that's out there. You have mobile phones, you have iPads, you have all your electronic gadgets, but it's not just the electronic gadgets out there. It's also the messaging that comes onto that. It's also the call to attention of these different pieces of distraction that are there in your daily lives. So you really do not have that kind of energy, that kind of motivation to stay focused on something for too long. And we'll figure out when we'll just talk a little bit ahead as to where does this attention come if you really want to engender attention. So on the one hand, you have cortisol that gets released when you have a deluge of distraction and when you have high anxiety. And on the other hand, you have something called the reward-seeking behavior. So I'm drawing on the research of somebody called Jan Panskep, whom I respect a lot as a scientist. And Panskep did this brilliant experiment where he created a little maze of rats running around, and he put cheese at the end of that maze. And what he did, he and his team did, is they kept increasing the pain for the mice to go through the maze on a daily basis in their search for cheese. So day one, no pain, mice ran straight, picked up the cheese. Day two, you increase the pain through electric shocks. I know it's a cruel way to do it, but with poor mice. And the third day you increase a little more. And he did this in the hope that at some point the mice would just give up and say, it's too painful to go and get the cheese. But that didn't happen. The mice actually would go and seek the cheese irrespective of whether they got to it or not, because they would give up after some time. The pain was too intense. And what Panskep and his team found is that this behavior to just seek something releases dopamine, the same happy chemical that you get released when you see chocolate, when you fall in love, and so on and so forth. So dopamine gets released, and this is like the reward happy chemical, right? So this is really what makes us go for our phones. So every time you seek an update on your Instagram or your Facebook or your WhatsApp, or even on your LinkedIn post, you're seeking validation. This validation is a reward. This is really what you try and seek. So this seeking behavior gets you addicted to keep searching for things and to flit from media. And this is really what the social media giants have used really well and leverage this research really well to make you all addicts to devices. So the seeking behavior. And finally, FOMO, the fear of missing out. This is simply because the deluge of distraction plus the reward seeking combined is a very potent combination. You always are worried. Am I missing out on something that my neighbor has already gotten into, or my colleague has gotten into, or somebody in my peer group has gotten into? So the fear of missing out combined with the reward seeking behavior, both, by the way, the FOMO also releases dopamine, which is why I clubbed anxiety, the deluge of distraction under cortisol, and reward seeking behavior and FOMO and the dopamine. So this is really what happens. These are the primary physiological reasons, and this applies to Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, because contrary to what marketers believe, the human brain is not segmented. That's something that we in marketing or in strategy like to delude ourselves, oh, Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, but the human brain is a human brain, reacts exactly like how it reacted a million years ago and maybe more. So therefore, it applies to all segments. Now, what does this result in? So there's a cost of distraction, there's a reason for distraction. What does this result in from a customer experience standpoint? Firstly, when a customer is distracted or when somebody is distracted, they are completely unforgiving on friction. They are completely unforgiving on anything that's going to cause them pain. This is something that experienced professionals need to understand. This need for creating peaks and moments of truth and pleasure and surprises, right, is all well and fine. But first, you need to eliminate friction, make things simple, eliminate the pain. So customers are very, very unforgiving as far as friction is concerned. They're also very unforgiving on surprises. They don't like unnecessary surprises. And there's a caveat to this, and I'll talk about it in a second. So nobody likes surprises, contrary to what all your strategists and marketing gurus think. Forgiveness, they're also they're very low on forgiving brands for making a mistake. When you're not stressed out, when your attention is not wandering around, you're more likely to forgive the mistakes of a brand, of an organization, of a journey than otherwise. So friction, surprise, and forgiveness are all absolutely no-nos. So what's the flip side of it? Of course, you make it easy for customers. And remember, I told you surprises, customers do not like surprises, but they love it when you actually marry to something called the peak end. So the peak end rule is something that Daniel Kahneman, the guy who won the first Nobel Prize for behavioral science, but he actually won it for economics, but his entire work is in behavioral science. He did some research, I think way back in 93, 94, which actually said that if you can map the peak and the end of a customer journey, that's all you need to focus on, because that's all what customers remember, as time passes by. So don't waste your energy looking at the other ends of the journey, other parts of the journey. So if you were to give, and peaks, by the way, are moments of emotional arousal, high moments of emotional arousal, just as a definition. So if you can provide surprises at the peak in the end, then I think you can still sneak in a surprise, but otherwise it's a no-no. And stress for consistency. You would love to go to a restaurant where you can actually predict how a pizza or a dal is going to be on a given day, as opposed to one day it's like Michelin 5, and the other day it's roadside. So people don't like these very large peaks in their experience. They prefer consistency. So this is really the background on what happens when distraction happens and you can't keep up with that. So under what conditions can we capture attention? What is that real environment in which you can capture your customer's attention? Remember, I told you the human brain has not evolved over millennia, and therefore, even now, one of the things that really captures our attention is our threat to survival. It's only when we are threatened to survive that that our attention is completely focused on that one thing, right? Go back to your own experience. When you believe that there's some threat to yourself, you're completely tunnel focused on that source of light or the source of noise or whatever it is. It works the same here. But obviously, these are digital journeys. These are customer journeys in the physical world also. And you really can't go around with a knife and threaten people to pay attention to you. Others, you're going to harm them. That's not going to work. That's not good customer experience either. So what's a surrogate to this? So what we've done is we've looked at the work across the ages in behavior science and neuroscience, and I've leaned very heavily on some resources from a good friend Kolenda, and we've actually put together 9 dimensions of what really gets our attention. And I'll show you some of this in practical life as we use them in some areas. Salience, obviously, color, orientation, and size. We know this from experience. Red color stands out in a traffic light. We are oriented to understand the red is at the top. So salience, what grabs our attention? Motion, anything that has motion in it will always be seen as a threat by your reptilian brain, whether it's dynamic motion, it's biological motion is the motion that's mimicked by a human body. People, of course, faces, bodies, body parts. Spatial cues, these are directional words, up, down, arrows, so on and so forth. Self-relevance, what is in it for me, right? What is in it for me is my name, my mutual interest, and so on and so forth. Goal relevance, how do I achieve a goal? How will you help me achieve my goal if I indulge in a journey with you? Unpredictability, this always wakes us up. You put in something that's unpredictable, and I'll show you some examples of that. And high arousal, anything that arouses any strong emotion. It could be any of the emotions that you have, any of the 6 or 7 primary emotions that you have, anything that gets high arousal. And finally, animals also get our attention because obviously we are wired to see them as threats to our survival. So these are possible, like I said, 9 dimensions on how you can get attention. Now, I'm going to show you some examples from our work, which will help you understand how we've used some of this, or how you should probably look at using this. So the first example that I have is actually of a touch point, which is a buying touch point. So there's somebody who's going to buy a product, and I'm going to show you a before, and I'm going to show you an after. So this is a before. So here you have a toaster that's up for sale, and you can see there's a price, very clean image. It's got all the specifications, it's got all the price out there, but absolutely nothing happening. It's not doing anything to the customer. So when we were asked, can you do something about it? This is what we did, right? Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see 2 pieces of text. One on the top is, I've pulled in these 4 dimensions from our earlier 9. And at the bottom is what you'll see are the behavioral biases that have been attended to. Now, I must tell the audience here that this is not to be confused with UI or UX, which is a subset of attention economics. UI and UX is about how I tweak the look and feel and how I make it more easy for people to understand, but it does not look beyond, some UI UX does, but not entirely does it look at how do I actually grab attention and how do I actually eliminate behavioral biases. Behavioral biases, for those of us who don't know, are the biases that we exhibit, the shortcuts that we built in our brain for quicker decision making. And there are 105, 106 behavioral biases that we bring to play at some point in time, some of these. So in this case, the behavioral biases that have been eliminated are framing, how the picture is framed, how the messaging is framed, the picture superiority, and the cognitive friction. Cognitive friction is the friction that is coming onto your thinking or working memory. And salience, you will see salience, people, self-relevance, and goal relevance here as the examples of the 9 dimensions. Now, this is another example that we've taken from the same case. Now, again, you'll see these are the pictures exhibited on their commerce site, and this is what we did to them. Now, you can see the difference. These are lifeless, great photographs of products, but this is really what is important, because this actually shows both self-relevance and goal relevance to you. And plus, of course, there are things like motion and higher arousal. And the behavioral bias that that we kind of focus on is something called effective forecasting, where we look at a future impact of something in our lives and take pleasure of it for today. So you're actually saying, oh, I can eat a great sandwich if I have this toaster, and that sandwich looks really yummy and I'm going to enjoy it a lot. Therefore, there is this emotional connect that I have with that device that's going to make those sandwiches. That's effective forecasting. And don't go by the long word, anthropomorphism is primarily where you actually give life to a product. So the product looks something that has human form and shape. Moving on, and the other example I've chosen, so this is a very B2C, lovely product, e-commerce kind of scenario. I'm now going to take one of the most mundane kind of settings that you can ever think of, a manufacturing B2B company trying to revive annual maintenance contracts and increase sales of their spares. You can't get more mundane than that. Now look how, so this is their before screen. Obviously they had more color and all that, but the sum and substance of the screen was like this. You go in there, you register a service request and blah, blah, blah. Obviously this does nothing to grab your attention. And here's what we did. Okay, so here you look at it again. We have reduced the number of options. So there is something called choice overload for people. They don't like too much of options. One of the things that gets attention to wonder is when you give too many choices. So you reduce the option. That's called something called Hicks law from behavior science. You chunk information in logical buckets. You chunk functionality in logical buckets from a behavior science perspective. And from those 9 dimensions, you can check it's got self-relevance, because you're actually saying, hey, this is for you, because I'm putting those dates that are important for upcoming milestones for you as a user. Goal relevance, because I can actually tell you what to do. So it's going to help you achieve your KPIs, your goals. And of course, salience, because all those images make things stand out. Moving on, so this is another screen from the same example. Now here you're actually going to go in and register a service request, and you have a within warranty, out of warranty, and so on and so forth. Again, does nothing to grab attention. People just used to flip the screen over and say, hey, and they would pick up the phone and call. So look at this from a customer experience standpoint. You created a great digital infrastructure. People don't use it because it just does nothing for them. And they pick up the phone and talk to the call center or talk to the service head. So you incur costs, your journeys are poor, but you still have this digital tick box that you've ticked, but which does nothing for your business. So what do you do, therefore? You now bring in things like, I'm going to lose the free support. So that's an arousal. That is clearly telling me that there's some threat that's coming my way. I'm also giving you some spatial cues. I'm also actually creating, again, the self-relevance and goal relevance. Renew now. I'm also saying for no added cost. And I'll show a subsequent screen which links to this, which probably completes the story. And again, the 3 things from a behavioral science perspective, the spark effect is an effect which comes into play when you create excessive friction for your customers. So you reduce friction. Loss aversion. We hate to, so when you look at things from between what you gain and what you lose, you always prefer not to lose something as opposed to gaining something new. So that's loss aversion. That's how humans are wired. If given a choice between giving up something that I have versus acquiring something new, I would hesitate very much to give up something that I already have. So loss aversion. So I will lose the free support benefit. And then how you frame the messaging, etc. I think this is the last example that I have from this case. There are many, many more, but I thought in the interest of time, we'll just take some interesting, close ones. Now here again, you'll see that there's something called framing in terms of its value, right? So we've actually said your AMC has saved you so much. Again, this talks back to goal relevance, talks back to self-relevance, and of course, those little hand icons that you see, you may think it's very unimportant and it's a very intuitive thing to do. But remember, I told you, people body parts, this plays an important part, and we have some very exciting research that actually confirmed this. And of course, and at the bottom, you'll see, I will lose a support benefit. If the guy has to click on that, there's going to be a very high barrier that's going to preventing him from choosing that option. So by default, you are going to be choosing renew now. And we saw some very significant upticks in both usage as well as spares and service revenue. Oh, okay. I have another slide. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, and this one is the best thing. One of the things that really hit home the message. You have lost so much money because your asset AMC is inactive. This really gets people, because now, and you look at the little blue line there, I will take my chances. There is not a single soul in the corporate world who will click that button and say, I will take my chances, because that guy's not going to last in his job for too long if he's taken his chances and the critical equipment has failed. So there is no way he's not going to say renew now. And again, this led to a significant shift in revenue opportunity. So this is really how you are actually engaging attention to generate revenue as opposed to losing revenue. Now, as part of this talk today, I thought I'll put in 3 really cool examples of stuff done all over the world. So this is something that we've done. And now I'm going to show you 3 very quick videos of what I think are great examples of grabbing attention. And I now want to take out your little writing pads, notes, whatever have you, and figure out how many of those 9 dimensions that we spoke about are visible in these following videos. Here comes the first one. Right. So this is a video that was made to show that Los Angeles is going to run out of water very soon, and therefore water is very important. Can you see the amount of thought that has gone into creating this messaging? You have dynamic motion, you have high arousal. The guy is going to hit his head on that empty swimming pool. That's creating palpitations or stress within you. There is goal relevance because it's telling you water is key, is something that you are involved in as well. So it's there's self-relevance, there's goal relevance, and there's biological motion, and of course, dynamic motion. So great example, just 6 seconds, an entire story told that captures attention. Let's look at the other one. Right. So by now, I'm sure all of you have become experts and can start predicting what of those 9 dimensions can you see in each of these messaging, right? So I don't have to now, you guys are now experts. And I think this is the last one, and this is brilliant. So this is a B2B, the most boring product that you can think of, software product to pay suppliers. You can't get a more boring category than that. But look at the brilliance of attention grabbing that's used here. Pay attention to this. Right. Brilliant, right? Isn't it? I mean, it's really, really great way of actually driving home message, even in a category that you thought was not possible. Right. So with that, I think we've come to the end of my little talk. I'm happy to take questions and, happy to clarify any doubts that you have, and we are exactly on time, at least the new time that was allocated to me. Right?
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Pillai. I think you had.
So I'm so sorry. I was told that was there no voice in the video?
I heard you loud and clear, so maybe
All right.
you can look at some feedback on the.
Okay, because I just got a little message saying that on the videos that I showed, the voice didn't come through. So I was wondering
On the final video, yes.
Oh, so do you want me to play that again?
If that is possible.
Sure, of course.
When you take longer to pay your suppliers, they struggle to stay afloat. When they struggle to stay afloat, your supply chain weakens. When your supply chain weakens, your company loses profits. When your company loses profits, they downsize. And when your company downsizes, you lose your job. And when you lose your job, you wind up homeless on the streets. Don't wind up homeless on the streets. Let Talia automate your early payment discounts.
Was that better now?
Perfect, loud and clear. Thank you, sir.
Welcome. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and we're done. Yeah. So.
Wow, thank you so much. And with a theme like "Where's your attention?" I'm sure everybody's saying right here. You had us glued to our screens, and I don't think we've got too many questions coming in right now because
Sure.
of a paucity of time. But thank you very much.
Pleasure's all mine, and have a lovely event ahead. Thank you for your attention.
And sir, before you go, when I say customer, you say FEST. Are you good with that? When I say customer, you say
FEST.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, and
my
best wishes to you and Olga, who's coming after me. So have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.